Hey guys, welcome to Business Growth Talks, part 2 of the 500th episode. So this is the second part. We're going to be doing a couple of interviews and my outro as well to the show. It was a wonderful experience I had there on the night. Hopefully you enjoyed part 1 and hopefully you will enjoy part 2 as well. Today we're going to have Gerard Edwards and we are going to have Jonathan J as our speakers tonight as I interview them on the 17th of May in 2024 at the Riverside Studios. So hopefully enjoy this. It was a very dear night to me. It was a wonderful evening. I had a lot of fun, a lot of stress, but a lot of fun. And hopefully you enjoy this live recording. Thank you.
So, our second guest is Gerard. He is the CEO of Podcast Radio. I've known Gerard for 4 years?
A few years, yeah.
I remember the first time I met Gerard. I don't know how we got connected, but I went to his office in Southwark, and I turned up, as I say, a while ago, and it was all, you were just getting this all going, and so I've known you for a while. What he actually does is he oversees the operations and growth for a global platform dedicated to showcasing podcasts 24/7 through live radio. Since launching in 2019, he has reached millions of listeners across the UK and the US and Australia, and has partnered with leading podcasts, broadcasters and brands to deliver quality audio content. Now, the truth or lie, which we'll keep till the end, you don't know what I'm going to say. Gerard is the lead singer in a British live rock and roll band called The Dark Light. Right. So tell me one thing about your company. Tell me about your company and where people can find you when they're based in the UK.
Okay, I'm having flashbacks right to this moment because I didn't know how close I should be to the mic, how sensitive it was, and I work in audio. So you brought me out, I'm like that, oh! And the flashback is to maybe 11 years ago. I walked out on a stage like this and it was packed with people. It was in New Zealand and it was the judge stage of New Zealand's X Factor. And I played a song by a band called, Fun. And when some nights I go out crashing in my bachelor. And I used to be a radio presenter. So this whole town and city I worked in was following my journey. Right. And then it just went, no. And that was it. I was kicked out. And I remember thinking, they didn't let me warm up on the mic, and I blamed that for about 10 years and then realised maybe that was just rubbish. So, I don't know if people are going to think that's true or not, that band thing, after hearing the 4 news. But I always grew up communicating, loving chatting, right? Yeah. And during university, I looked at law, I looked at archaeology and all sorts of things, anthropology.
Was the archaeology because of Indiana Jones?
No, it wasn't.
So I wanted to be an archaeologist at 7 years old, and that was purely because of Indiana Jones. I didn't know if that was...
No, I always wanted a job where I could be lazy. So I ended up in radio. But what I knew is before I got there, I looked at sign language courses and I looked at radio at the same time, right? I've been at university for a few years and I was like,
what did you do at university?
English, believe it or not, statistics. Law is where I went into. Did really well in the first law paper, couldn't be bothered in the second, and my brother's a partner in a law firm and I thought, no. Because I was watching his life thinking that's not the life for me. So I ended up getting up way too early every morning for years, being a breakfast radio presenter in New Zealand. Did that thing with the whole New Zealand X Factor. And I earned my chops. I don't know if that's the expression or not, but I ended up doing my 10,000 hours plus in a career of audio and managing radio stations, I ended up back in London. Okay, I'll tell you this.
Your choice, or was that because you were sent from New Zealand?
No, I wasn't kicked out, and I haven't got any kids over there that I'm avoiding. So I was doing really well, right, in the career. And to tell you what did happen, my family lived 8 hours away from where I did, and they were all from Liverpool too. We emigrated once, and I thought, I live in this country, not near my family. I went to check in with my roots and went back to Liverpool. Now I thought I was going to go back to Liverpool and smash it, right? I was going to be like, whoa, this guy's so interesting, he's so funny on the microphone. And I got back to Liverpool and no one cared that I'd been a presenter overseas. No one cared that I'd been good. And it kind of taught me an invaluable lesson that, you know, you can be good at this, you can be important there if they know you. And when you're not known, your skills have to be proven all over again. Yeah. Where that got me to was I still got in with a radio station in Liverpool. They still went, this guy's pretty quirky, this guy's pretty good on microphone.
Knows what he's doing, yeah.
And instead of putting me on a show, they made me put on some Speedos and deliver sausage sandwiches, right? And they called me the Speedo King. And it was not an impressive sausage that I was showing on the streets, but people were beeping their horn and going nuts, and I was well out of shape, and it was the worst experience. Anyway, that was the lowest, and then I moved down to London and ended up managing a couple of radio stations by hook or by crook, and really working it and showing off and proving my skills here and there. And so, and this is a really long story to say, managed radio stations and had a hand in designing them, which is really unusual, really rare. And as I was doing that, I thought, not many people globally get to design a radio station. No one gets a blank piece of paper and said, look, we need a brand that does this, this, this. You need to figure out how many staff it should have. Here's the budget. And I ended up doing it. And there was a CEO above me. I was in a lucky position where he let me do it. I think he had to let me do it because he couldn't do it. Right. So I kind of managed upwards and managed downwards of the team. And then I thought, couldn't I do this for myself? Couldn't I make a company that does something in audio? And the long and short of it was, I was watching podcasting growing and podcasts struggling with getting new ears. You know, you're making something with all your passion project. How do you get someone to listen to it? Yeah. And in my opinion, especially with the career I'd had, it was like, radio is sitting right there, and it's been doing that for any genre of music for 50 years. Yeah. And it's been doing it very well. And then I went into startup land, made a company, which was podcast radio, and here's where it started getting troublesome. I had to defend radio and I had to defend podcasting to investors who didn't know either, but were willing to rip it to shreds. It's a hard journey trying to start a company, and I didn't start a company seeing if I could get 2 or 3 clients. I started in reverse. I went and got investors first, and it was a really unusual set of circumstances. And I know how we met, by the way. Right. I went into a Facebook group for podcasters and said, I'm thinking of designing a thing. Right. And it's going to be a radio station in London, and it's going to do this, this, this. And you messaged and said, hey, I've got a podcast, and you gave us content. And I think the reason I'm on the stage is probably we've never forgotten it, right?
No, we've never forgotten. Definitely a memorable experience for me, because for you it was breaking the boundaries of radio, because radio has been for many, many years music and has been spoken word, but the being able to marriage between podcasting, having podcasts on radio, was something really different and interesting. So when we connected and I came to see you in your offices, it was like, I want to hear about this. Like, where were you going with it? How are you doing? How are you going to approach that? And I remember you saying about the investors, and you'd got some investors, and it was going to be great. And I was like, I'm sure it will be.
That sounds sarcastic.
No, not at all.
It's going to be great. It's going to be shite.
But the interesting thing is, you've now got to the stage where you're partnering in the US, in Australia, and places like that. How did that partnership come about, and how are you working in the US?
You know, I've got to be careful not to use lingo and jargon here.
Yeah, please don't.
I've also got to be careful that you can see I've just noticed you can see my legs beneath my trousers. You know, when you just... Ooh.
Do you need longer socks, or...?
No, I tried to dress them to the tone, and I failed miserably. I didn't even dress me. I got the other half. Does this look good? And I still don't really know. I don't know if she tells me to wear that as a laugh. Because we've got a 2-year-old, and I watch him and he looks way better dressed than me. And I'm like, but she also dresses me, so I don't really know what's... Anyway. So what we did was that big P word, which is pivot as a company. So we started as a London radio station, which is when we met. And what you have to do in UK broadcasting is rent the airwaves, which is why we needed investors at the start.
Yeah.
Big costs, well, arguably big or not, 5 to 10 grand a month to be on the airwaves in London if you want to do it. And I'm not giving away any secrets here, don't worry. You could go and do it tomorrow and have yourself a radio station. Problem is, you need 11 grand by the end of the month to make sure that you can at least promise something to the bill collectors at the end. So we started doing that, and we were making some ads back, and we did it again, making some ads back. And you realise you're up against conglomerates who own multiple radio stations who don't want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And podcast radio has stayed true to its concept that if you're a podcaster and you're heard on podcast radio, you will have new ears listening to your content who had never heard it before or don't know you. Just like a rock radio station in the 80s and 90s with a rock album. That is it's the same concept. And the investors would say, well, couldn't you go and get a podcast online? I'm like, yeah, but you can go and buy a rock album. Right? And I'm trying to convince people that may also think it's crazy. But the numbers came in, people started listening. And the short answer is, when rock radio stations became a thing, believe it or not, one day there was never a rock radio station. And then 2 weeks later, there was one coming out of America, and then there were 10, because they saw they were making money, and then there were a million probably around the world. And rock albums shot through the roof because people were listening to on the radio. So all we've done is the same concept with podcast content.
So you're saying the growth of podcasting is down to your radio station?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Problem solved, no, we're part of the solution of what is called discoverability. It's hard to get your stuff heard. Now, here's the thing. In TV and radio, there were a finite amount of channels and options. So they had your eyes and ears.
Yeah.
And in podcasting, there is an basically unlimited option pool to go and choose, which means it's hard to find what you think you want.
Yeah.
And I rewind the clock. People have said radio doesn't work for, I don't know, if it's at 99 years old, they said it hasn't worked for 98 years, right?
Yeah.
And I rewind the clock to when I was a broadcaster back in New Zealand, when I got brought at this station to be quirky and young.
And wear Speedos.
And wear Speedos. No, that was the next career move. And the iPod was out. And these are all social concepts happening around us, right? The iPod came out, and everyone went, well, that's radio, don't it play songs, and now you can choose all your own. And just like everything is happening with social media and your phone, you realise people aren't very good at being specialists. Not every single person is. Yeah. So you got an iPod with 5,000 songs, and you picked 5,000 songs, and then you listened to 10 and realised you actually didn't really like your other 4,000 songs. And then you realised you got sick of your 10 and you went, what do I do now? And radio has this, lucky for it, as an industry, this way of reinventing itself here and there and being original. Right now, as to what you talked about at the start of the evening, radio is going through an issue just like any media where it's trying to be sensationalist to get your clicks and your eyes and your ears. But podcast radio, our mission was to work with an industry that has a bit like rock and roll speech. Yeah. It's people from the garage, or it's people hiring a studio, or it's professionals, or it's radio stations in the back room recording their presenters saying things they shouldn't be saying that they can't say legally on air. And we took all that content, made it radio friendly again, and we've made it like the length of a song and put it 24/7, and it's called podcast radio. And we're in America now. We're about to launch into Canada. We're about to launch 3 stations in Missouri. We've got one in Detroit, Tampa, Southwest Florida. We've got a couple of FMs down there. I'm just jargoning here, doing that thing I said I shouldn't do, but I'm just saying there's a list growing. Yeah. And we've gone to North America, the promised land, because that's where it's interesting, it's demanded. And the only reason we're doing well is because we found the right gap at the right time, because radio companies have got unlimited deep pockets that could roll out what we're doing, right? but they pay a radio presenter £2 million a year to do this show. So it's counterintuitive for them to say, we can also get a show for free that we think is worth equal value of your listeners' time, and we get for free, and it's on another station of ours. So they just kind of go, well, we can't do that, because people might say, well, should you really be paying those presenters? Or how good are those presenters? Or what is talent? And in that little grey area was a guy who used to work in radio who went, do you know, that industry is audio, this industry is audio. I reckon we can make a product called podcast radio. We've done it, but because it's obvious and because it's marrying two audio mediums together, there are actually a million ways you could try and do it. How do you monetize it? How do you measure it? How do you compare it? What is your ultimate mission? We've ended up in America only ever playing 11.5 minutes of a podcast, but we demand that we have a presenter before it who says, hey, this is really great because X, Y, Z. And then you listen, and all it's designed around is that moment in your car, and it used to happen on radio and doesn't happen so much, and it never happens on an iPod and doesn't happen with Spotify. And it's just before you turn your engine off, someone says something and you go, whoa, what's that? And you go, that's really interesting. And then you listen for another 5-10 seconds and you're hooked. Now, podcasting is full of that. Yeah. Full of that. But it's really hard to get someone to hear that 10 seconds, that 5 seconds, that 1 second that makes them want to keep listening. And all our platform is designed is around that concept. And then, of course, we sell a load of ads if we can. Yeah. If we can.
Right, last question. We've talked a lot about podcasting, obviously. But who was the person that inspired you as a youngster?
Do you know what? It was my dad. Is that a good answer, bad answer? I don't know. Because he had a really good moustache. No, it was my dad, because we moved from Liverpool to New Zealand, and it was before you could move from Liverpool to New Zealand. Right. And I think my grandma died, his mum, and he had a shake, and he thought, is this what I want for my kids? And he went to the newspaper, and in the newspaper was an advert saying, do you want to move to New Zealand? That was it. Phone number. Yeah. So we rang it up, probably like that. Is that how... It wasn't like that, anyway. And he rang it up, 1995, which sounds recent in the scheme of technology.
Well, for most people here, I think, it actually feels like, oh, it was just yesterday, 1995. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say they weren't born. I was like, please don't say that. 95, he rang the number.
Yeah.
They sent a VHS. He put the VHS in, and we were sitting in our little house, terraced house in Liverpool, and this guy windsurfed up to the beach and put it down, slid up, and he went, move to New Zealand.
And that was it.
And we went, let's do it! Anyway, we did it, and it was the hardest thing, because there was no Google, you couldn't look up house value, you couldn't look up what's a pound to a dollar, and we got ripped to shreds with our family savings. Right. We didn't have much money, but they took all of our money, this company. And my dad just kind of rode through it. He never let us kids know that we were struggling. I mean, we haven't had a hard life. Maybe that's part of the problem, that, you know, some people have a really interesting story, like, oh, I got through all of this.
It was so hard for me to do this and this.
And mine's really boring. Mine's like, oh, it went all right, yeah.
If I'd have known this, I would have got another guest. If I'd have known it was all so easy for you.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, but it's an interesting point, because the things that make clickbaity is that whole story, I grew up in poverty, or we always struggled. And the reality is, yes, there are people that have really difficult stories, and they can be incredibly strong and resilient and do wonderful things. But sometimes your life's okay. And what's interesting about what you said about your father was, it was the inspiration bit that he just went, I want something different for my kids and for my wife. And you went and did it. So...
Don't forget the moustache. He had a really good moustache.
Right, yeah, of course. Look, guys, thank you, Gerard, for this conversation here. Look, everyone, you've got about 20 minutes. The magician was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, he wasn't here. But you've got about 20 minutes. Go get yourself a drink. Get ready.
Imagine I just went, it's me, the magician. But it's not.
It's not.
Unfortunately, it's not. It's just about podcasting.
Yeah. So. You got any tricks?
Is that a thing?
So that's good.
It works with my 2-year-old. He's like,
That is going to work brilliantly on audio, isn't it?
yeah. Put it away, excuse me.
Look, guys, thank you. Can everyone give a clap to Gerard?
Truth or lie? Truth or lie?
Oh, truth or lie? Ah, that's very good. I've completely forgot. So, Gerard.
I need to say, I'm not sure you even know the answer because I'm about to say something after it.
Go on, go.
So I did sing in a rock band for 7 years, and we broke up about a month ago, and it was like breaking up 3 marriages in one go. The bassist, the guitarist, and the drummer.
Oh.
I went, look, lads, I'm really struggling with time running this bloody company. They wanted to practice on Sundays, and I said, hey, look, I'm going to have to leave the band, but I'll keep singing until you get a new singer.
Right.
And it was like, you can't do this to us.
Oh,
Well, it's over, isn't it? And it's like 3 times at the same time with different opinions. And I expect.
So it's actually a truth and a lie.
But exactly,
it's actually both. Isn't it?
It's
both done brilliantly.
It's an accidental lie. Yeah.
Look, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Gerard. And look, you guys, exit. I've unlocked the door for you, so you can escape and get yourself a drink. And you've got 20 minutes, and then we'll go on to our next one.
Thank you.
Right. Now, we have our last guest. It is Jonathan J. He is a buying business expert with over 25 years' experience in making deals. He recently bought 48 businesses in the pandemic and sold it for a profit. He helps train people to buy businesses and supports them with face-to-face coaching as well as online training. He also has a successful podcast and YouTube channel, and please do check that out. So would I lie to you for Jonathan? He appeared on a TV advert for Heinz Spaghetti.
Good evening.
Evening, everyone.
So Jonathan, thank you very much for joining me tonight. So before we start going in a little bit more detail about you, can you tell me about deal makers?
Sure. So over the last 25 years, I've spent 25 years buying and selling businesses. And about 7 or 8 years ago, someone said, how do you do it? Teach us how to do it. So I got a small hotel meeting room in Putney. 12 people came along, listened to how I did it. I thought that was the end of it. I thought that was the one and only time people would be interested. And then more people said, can you tell us how to do it? So I hired a bigger room. And now we've had over 13,500 people around the world do our training program. So it grew very, very quickly, unintentionally. And now we run training programs on Zoom for people all around the world. I've been running one today for 25 of our top clients. Going to Australia in November, running a 3-day event on the Gold Coast in November. We were in Dubai just a few weeks ago running an event there. So we do this all around the world, and we help business owners who want to acquire other businesses, and we help entrepreneurially minded people who want to get into business, buy an existing profitable business rather than having to start one from scratch. Because the culture in the UK is you go and start a business from zero and you work 3 years without making any money, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. My philosophy is very much buy a business that someone else has already proven works, already makes money from, and buy that business for them and sort of carry on their business. Yeah. But with a couple of differences to what most people expect. Number one, you don't manage the business day to day, because that's the stress, that's the hassle. Anyone who's run a business, owned a business, knows that that's where the stress is. And number two, when you buy it, you don't go and remortgage your house, put your life savings into it. You buy it without using any of your own cash, which means that anyone can do this. It's not just people who've got millions of pounds in the bank.
So we'll talk about the buying businesses in a minute. I'm just fascinated how you were able to start from a small room in Putney to be travelling around the world, Dubai and other places. What was the step process that you went through to be able to go to a global audience?
With deal makers, so I guess it was there was a demand. That's always helpful, and I actually discovered, because I'm not really a social media person. I'm on LinkedIn, and recently I've been put on TikTok, which is quite an experience. Something that's slightly out of my comfort zone on that one. But I've discovered that when you put videos on YouTube, people all around the world find them.
Yep.
And I've got a YouTube channel which is really, I don't really do any marketing. I just put videos on YouTube.
Yep.
That was the beginning of it all, and completely unintentional, really.
And so you were able to get to a global audience, and then there was a need, and then you went.
Yeah, and prior to the pandemic, I was running events live. I was sort of hiring venues and running conferences. Yeah. And then, of course, with the pandemic, like so many other people, I was thinking, what happens now? I can't run conferences. Does everything just stop? And then someone said, we can do it on Zoom. Now, I'd used Zoom before. Right. I'm not really a technical person in any way whatsoever. Right. So I got someone to teach me how to use it. Realised actually it was a lot easier than it appears. And then suddenly I had people from all around the world coming onto these Zoom sessions, right. And the business just grew and grew.
Amazing. So let's go back to the buying businesses, starting businesses, because we're taught to have a job. That's what most people, when you're in education,
the majority of people work for someone else.
Yes. But what's really interesting for me is that you talked about it, but I just want you to extend on that. What's the benefit of buying a business rather than starting a business?
Sure. So anyone who started a business knows that it's hard, headaching work that doesn't always prove successful. And I've started businesses. In fact, I've never worked for anyone else. I've never had a job. I've never had a job interview. I've never had a P45.
Have you got a CV?
I haven't got a CV. It's a completely different world to me. So I dropped out of university at 19. Didn't get my degree, and which was very disappointing to my parents and also to me, actually, because I thought that was the path I was going to take. But I wanted to start a business. But looking back, I did it the hard way. Yep. You come up with an idea. Yep. You try and market test the idea to see if there's going to be people who buy
that's
your
idea. Some people don't even do that. So
well, yeah, I guess so. And you go through this painful process where you can't pay the bills for a long time, and then it might just work. Now compare that to buying a business. So you've got someone who's already been through that pain. They have a business that's been established for a number of years, and we always say never buy a business that's been established for less than 5 years. Okay. But usually it's retiring owners. They've owned the business for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Yeah. The business is proven. Now, it might have seen better days, because sometimes people fall out of love with their business over the years, and they don't pay so much attention to it. But we've got a business that's making money, and that's the most important thing. So if it doesn't make money, then it's not a business. Yeah. Okay? So we've got a business that's making money. If we can take over that business, if we can construct a deal that means that the exiting owner is happy with that deal, you're happy with the deal, you can take over the business. Remember, we're not remortgaging our house, we're not spending our own cash. And now we have a business that's already got the things that startups struggle with. It's already got a brand, it's already got a website, it's already got an office, it's already got staff, it's already got products and services, it's already got customers, and more importantly than anything else, it's already got cash flow. So it's got money coming in. And of course, we only buy profitable businesses, so it's making a profit. So the day you buy it, it's now making a profit for you.
Right.
And I think that's a lot easier than struggling with a startup.
Yeah, it was a real revelation. I went to one of your training probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and you made it sound very easy, which is one thing, and it's not, like even buying businesses, but what you've explained to me is that buying a business is...
The process actually is straightforward,
Right.
but like with most things in life, is the implementation
Yeah.
of that process.
But how does someone buy that business without remortgaging their house, without finding the cash?
So the way everyone thinks you buy a business is you go to your bank manager and say, I want to buy a business. The bank manager says, how much is it? And you say, £500,000. And he says, okay, how much equity have you got in your house? And how much cash can you contribute? And they might give you a loan and they take security over your house, and you put your life savings in as well. You cash out your pensions, put all the money in. You give that £500,000 to the owner of the business. The owner of the business gives you the keys. You do the swap.
Yeah.
They've got your money, you've got their keys, and now you're left to it. And that's actually what a lot of people still do. Even though I teach thousands of people how to do it a better way, there are still people who do it what I call the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
And that's high risk. It's high risk because you borrowed the money, and we don't really want to borrow money, do we? Yeah, but that is high risk. We've secured it against our property, so if we can't pay it back, the bank takes our property. We've given it to someone who's just given us a whole bunch of promises about what the business can do. They've given us the keys. They've sailed off into the sunset. They're on the world cruise, and you're now trying to figure out how to make the whole thing work.
Yeah.
High risk. So what we do is, if we need finance to buy the business, and we don't always need finance, we'll leverage the assets inside the business.
Right.
So this is a little bit like when you buy a house, your own personal property.
Yeah.
You're leveraging the property to pay for the property. You're using the property as collateral for the loan to buy itself.
Yeah.
You're borrowing against it to buy itself. And that's what we're going to do with the business. Now, there are some businesses that don't have assets. So these are often service businesses. So there are no assets. So we have to be a little smarter if we don't have any assets. So sometimes we can actually buy a business today and we can pay for it later.
Yeah.
Now, this often seems quite a sort of unusual concept to most people, but you can buy it today and pay for it later. And here's the best thing, you pay for it out of the profits of the business. In other words, the business self-finances.
So it's the guarantee. You use it as a guarantee that the business...
No, we just use the profits that the business generates. We give half of that, for example, to the seller of the business, and the other half is ours.
Right.
Now, if we can do that, how many businesses could we buy? Well, as many as we can do that with.
So you bought 48 in the pandemic, didn't you?
Yeah, it was 53.
50. Apologies.
Yeah.
I obviously got old data.
People often say to me, what's my best advice about buying 53 businesses during a pandemic? And I say, don't buy 53 businesses during a pandemic. I mean, it was incredibly stressful. Yeah. It was a great time to buy, a terrible time to operate. You know, we had hundreds and hundreds of staff, and it was just very, very stressful. And actually probably the most stressful time of my life, unintentionally. But you don't have to do that. You can do one deal, and one deal can change your life. So, you know, if you buy a business that's making, let's say, £300,000 profit after tax a year, and maybe we're doing the financing method that I just described, so half of that for the next 2 or 3 years goes out of the door to the seller. You know, after 2 or 3 years, then all of it's yours. Yeah. So 150 goes out the door to the seller, 150 comes to you. You're still £150,000 a year better off. Yeah. Now, the other key thing, this is very, very important, you're not buying a job. You're not buying a business so you can turn up every day, sit behind a desk and solve everyone's problems for them, which is actually what most business owners do. Most business owners, or many business owners, I should say, actually have created a job for themselves where they sit behind a desk and solve everyone's problems and go home exhausted and then go into the office on Saturday to get some work done. Yeah. So we don't want to do that at all. We actually want to, and this isn't being lazy, but we want to work less for more. So what we do is we buy businesses where other people can run them and operate them. Yeah. That means we need to buy larger businesses, because small businesses, owner-operated businesses, mean that the moment you buy the business, the owner leaves, there's nothing left. So I was consulting with a client in Canada, and the client said, I found an accountancy business, Jonathan. I want to buy this accountancy business. I said, so tell me all about it. He said, well, there's 4 staff. I said, okay, so tell me about the 4 staff, because it sounds rather small. He said, well, one's the owner. Okay, well, the owner's going. Right. And the other's the owner's wife. Okay, they're going. Right. And then there's the owner's son. I said, well, they're going. I said, who's left? He said, well, the receptionist. I went, well, they're not going to be too happy about running this accountancy business, so there's no business left. So we want to buy a business that's large enough to actually have someone who looks after the finances, someone who looks after the operations, someone who looks after the people, someone who looks after the marketing. A business that's self-sufficient, so when you take the owner out, it still operates, it still runs. Now, the good thing about those businesses, apart from the fact that you don't have to go there and run it every day, is that they're bigger businesses, they're more profitable businesses, but actually means there's more upside to you. Yeah. Now, I know it's not all about the money, but if we're going to do this, we might as well make some money along the way. In which case, we're not making 150, we might make $1 million plus. And I've got clients making more than £1 million a year from businesses they bought that they do not operate, they do not manage. In fact, sometimes, in fact, many times, I'm thinking of some examples for my clients today. They bought businesses like Carsten. Carsten is Danish, he lives in London. Last year, he bought a business that does tree surgery. Now, he's a management consultant. He doesn't know anything about tree surgery businesses. He's still got his management consultancy. He's now got a tree surgery business that makes him £300,000 a year after he's paid everyone.
Great. That's really telling. So, because it's having the operations already in place, so you're not turning over the job. You have people that can already run that business, and that's a real shift for business owners to not be the technician, not be the person or the manager that's dealing with everybody there.
And let me tell you why that happens. Because when we start a business, it's usually just us. And I've done it, and you've done it. And you start off and you do everything yourself. You're in charge of the marketing. You're in charge of the finance and paying the invoices. You're in charge of the distributors, and you're in charge of the suppliers. You're in charge of absolutely everything. Now, the dangerous thing about being in charge of everything is that you start to become quite good at some of those areas, which means that when you look for your first employee, you can never find someone who's as good as you. And then eventually you do hire someone, you get frustrated with them, and you say, look, I might as well just do this myself, because it's taking me so long to explain to you how to do the job. You don't do it as well as me, goodbye, I'll do it myself. So that's why small businesses stay small, because of the ability of the owner who started it. Now, the smartest thing that any owner can do is to realise 2 things. First of all, there are people out there who can do all these things better than you. You just haven't found them yet because you haven't looked very hard, because you gave up on the very first person that you.
So hiring is one of the most difficult things in a business, isn't it? Because whether you think you're the bottleneck, whether you are the bottleneck that you're not letting other people grow in that business, it's always for me the hardest thing to get people that are trustworthy, that can deliver as well as be able to help grow.
I'll tell you why it's hard to find those people. Because people give up too early in their search for those good people. So they say, I want someone who's great at social media. I want a social media manager, someone who's fantastic at social media. And they put an advert on Indeed.com, they get some people to come along, half of them don't show up for the interview, that's frustrating in itself. The people who do show up, some are late, so you already sort of discounted them before you even started the interview. And you start the interview and you think, oh, this person's not very good. And then at the end of the day, you're absolutely exhausted and you give up and you say, you know what, I'll just do it myself. Okay? Now, what if I told you that in the room next door there are 100 people who want a job in social media and they are available within the next 90 days to start a job working for you? So some of them can start immediately, some might have to give notice, but they are all people who fit the description of what you're looking for. You'd say, that's very, very exciting. I'll send you next door, go and talk to 100 people, go around the room talking to them, and every time you meet someone you think, actually, this isn't going to work, ask them to leave the room. And you'll start whittling it down until you've got a sensible number. Now, do you think out of 100 people you could find an amazing social media person?
You'd like your odds, wouldn't you, of 100 people?
It's probably going to work, all right? Now, why didn't you find that person before? Because you didn't meet 100 people. And I think, again, it's because people give up too early, because it is a frustrating process. I'm terrible at hiring people. I hire people that I like rather than people who are good at the job, and that's just not a good thing. So if you're someone like me, what you do is you find someone who's good at hiring, and it might just be a friend who's just really good at saying, that person's got something special about them. They can do this job brilliantly. And you know what, Jonathan? They can do it better than you. So just find someone to do it for you if it's not your skill set.
Moving on. What type of leader do you think you are?
Oh, I saw that question. I'm not. That's not really the way I think of myself.
Okay.
So I think of myself as the person who can make things happen. But then I'm way better off when I pass it to someone else. I'm not really the people person, the people manager. I think to be a good leader, you need to have skills that I lack. It's just not my thing at all. I can have the idea for a project, I can get the project off the ground, I can make it happen, I can bring the right people together, I can make it happen very quickly. I've got the self-motivation to keep going even when times are tough, but I have no interest in the
sort of leadership role. I'd rather hire someone to be that person.
Right.
And that probably wasn't the answer.
Well, no, it's an interesting one because it's something I ask on my podcast, like sometimes to people, like what type of leader you are. And you often get people that might be they're delegators or they bring teams together or they're very technical. And often a thing about leadership is you're either pulling people along, which is tiring and painful and agonising, or you're pushing people, you're directing them and letting them be able to explore how they can make your business great.
Yes.
Would you say you're a pull? Like you're like, because you think about this, you said your business during the pandemic was incredibly stressful. You had a lot of employees that you were having to deal with. Do you think, did you learn something from that experience that means that you've changed your next businesses that you might grow?
Yeah, good question. No, I learned. I think everything's a learning experience.
Sure.
You learn from everything. I'm learning from this podcast experience. There's always something that you take away from it, and I think that I learned a lot. I learned that if you're going to scale something to we went from 0 to 8 figures in like sort of 18 months, 375 staff and all that. So I think that the biggest takeaway from that was, however good your business is, if you don't have a sufficiently well-developed senior management team, you're always going to do it the hard way. So you're always going to struggle in some way.
Yeah.
And that's having an outstanding finance director. And I worked my way through 3 average finance directors.
Right.
Because I should have just gone for the outstanding one right from the start. You need an outstanding head of people, otherwise known as HR. You need someone to look after the staff. You need an outstanding marketing person. You need an outstanding operations person, and then you need a CEO. So one of my clients in the domiciliary care sector. So domiciliary care is where people come to your home, they look after you when you're not able to.
Sure.
And he bought 17 businesses in a 4-year period. So I met him, he came on the program in 2019.
Yeah.
He bought 17 businesses and he's just sold for £11.5 million. And he bought the businesses in exactly the same way I described. He didn't put any of his own money in. Nothing. And I asked him a similar question. I said, what's the biggest lesson that you learned? He said, I put in a CEO that I couldn't afford right at the start.
Right.
But I knew that without that person, I'd be dragged into operations and things that I wasn't good at or didn't know about. And he said that was the best investment he ever made. Unfortunately, I asked him that question a few years too late because it's a great piece of advice. Yeah. And it's easy sometimes to forget that sometimes the best piece of advice are very simple and very straightforward.
That's fascinating. The way that the learning experiences in business, in some ways, are the rewarding parts, because you might do something wrong, you might be able to build that business to a point, and then it's about letting go and, as you say, bringing the right people in to be able to grow it even faster or scale it. So I think that's a really fascinating point, and it's really important as a business owner to sort of accept you made mistakes during the process, and being able to like drop your ego and go, okay, I made the mistake with a hire or with
I mean, I don't have any ego around this at all, which is interesting because my critics, who I usually have never met, always paint me as this very arrogant individual. I'm not. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at lots and lots of things, and I'm good at just a very few things. But fortunately, the things that I'm good at compensate for the things that I'm bad at. So it balances out. It balances out nicely.
Yeah.
But anyone who's been in business for more than a few months figures out you don't know it all, however experienced you are. So over the last 25 years, I've done about 75 deals. I've sold to private equity. I've bought businesses from private equity. I've sold to trade, bought from trade. I've turned around struggling businesses. I've tried to turn around struggling businesses and failed. So I've done the whole range. And even now, and I know I know my way around a contract, around a sale and purchase agreement, around commercial leases, but I'm still seeing things that I haven't seen before, or wording that I don't understand. So surrounding yourselves by good lawyers, good accountants is just so important. And sometimes you can just be the glue. You can be the deal maker. And this is what I say to my clients a lot. You don't have to be great at numbers. I'm certainly not. You don't have to be great at people management. You just hire people who are.
Yeah. And last question, what does legacy mean to you?
Yeah, I saw that question as well. I had to think about that because it's not a word that I use very often, because I think I'm quite realistic about these things, and I know that people can be forgotten very quickly.
Yeah.
Life moves on.
Mm.
I've written 14 books in the last 20 years, so maybe a few of those will be knocking around in the future.
Yeah.
And maybe with the internet now, my people will be watching my YouTube channel in 10 years time, 20 years time, 10, 20 years time after I've died. I hasten to add. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she's the most important person in my life, and everything I do is with her in mind. And I don't think it's about impressing strangers, and it's about those relationships with the people closest to you. So I don't have a particularly sort of clever answer to your question, but
so I asked this on the podcast quite a lot at the end of the interview, and it's an interesting question because the empire builders of business people often come up with that idea that they want their business to last 100 years after they're dead.
Well, yeah, that's not my...
No, but then a lot of people as parents often say, my legacy is my children, and how I'm influencing my children. If my business folds when I die, like hopefully you've got legacy planning, that you've got people that will be able to step in and keep the business growing after you pass away. That would be the ideal, I suppose. But
well, with AI, someone can carry on doing my videos and it will look like me and sound like me, and I'll live forever on the internet.
There you go. There you go. So look, thank you, Jonathan, for speaking today. Okay. Right, before we finish, truth or lie? So Jonathan said that I said that he appeared on a TV advert for Heinz Spaghetti, and it's actually true.
27 years ago, I was swinging a string of Heinz Spaghetti from my fork, looking very mysteriously down the camera, and yes, my 15 minutes of fame.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Right, so some of you might be thankful that was the last guest. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourselves. Thank you. Thank you. Right, so this is my final bit before we can all escape to the bar and have a nice drink. So that's the end of the 500th episode. I would like to thank all of my guests, as I mentioned. I'm sure you agree they've been giving some amazing insights and interesting stories. So thank you everyone. Can we clap all of our guests? Thank you again. They're not here anymore, unfortunately, but thank you again for the entertainment of Encrypted Love. We all enjoyed it, didn't we? It was really, really good. And I thought it was interesting to have that part of tonight and just sort of give you guys a little bit of entertainment as well as some interesting stories. Lastly, there have been some people behind the scenes who have made this night happen. Firstly, all the videos, my friend Paul Kirsch from Boss Academy created all those videos, and that was fantastic. I'd like to thank the ushers who are all been behind the scenes, making sure everyone is in place and has got everything they needed. And that's Mark O'Brien, Denise Shah and Nick Waller. I can't wait to see the photos from Stephen Borthwick. They'll be shared on social media, so do check out those. Thank you, Stephen. But someone that has been with me through the whole process with creative ideas as well as practical solutions is the guy that's sitting right at the top there, always in the hiding, is Kieran Wynyard. Thank you so much, Kieran. You've been amazing. Right, this whole project has taken over my life since the start of the new year. A friend of mine suggested before Christmas that I should do this as an episode. And I thought about it over Christmas, and in the new year, January 2nd, when I started to go back to work, I decided this was what I was going to do. So it's taken over my life. It has been the most testing, challenging, and the most rewarding project that I've done in my business career. I would just like to give a shout out, they probably can't hear, but for Riverside Studio team that have helped me be able to get everything set up here. Hopefully you all agree this has been an amazing venue. This has been fantastic. Right, I have told my wife this. The last fact, or lie, truth or lie, is I've been married for 15 years and 1 day, and we didn't have an anniversary celebration because of this show. True. Yeah. Thank you, Roz. Thank you so much. Lastly, also, can you all give yourself a clap as well? Thank you so much for sticking with me tonight and being with us tonight. Thank you, everyone. And lastly, I just want to give a thank you to all those people that couldn't be here tonight. I've got friends in America that were devastated that I wasn't being able to stream it. But thank you to all those that have been listening and watching YouTube, so thank you. Right. I was trying to be clever here and I've completely forgotten because of tonight. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, Apple or Spotify for audio. And if you prefer videos, then you can go to YouTube and search Business Growth Talks or go to the QR code that's at the back of the programs. Right, I was going to check whether anyone had actually subscribed.
The Wi-Fi doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I know the Wi-Fi does work. I know the Wi-Fi does work. So what I would do after I finish this, I'll turn my phone back on. I will check the subscribers, and if you haven't, there is going to be problems. Look, there will be drinks outside in the bar. There'll be opportunities to be able to network, meet new people, and share a drink with friends. So lastly, thank you so much for being part of my evening. I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you.